Tokyo Disney Resort has some of the best rides in the world, and whilst even the thrill rides at Tokyo Disney prioritize theming and storytelling over speed and intensity, there are some rides which can appease your need for speed. So, what are the fastest rides in the resort, how fast are they, and how do they trick you into feeling like you're going even faster than you actually are? I'm Jordan at 8-Bit Theme Park Japan, where we have weekly Tokyo theme park videos, and today we're counting down the fastest rides at Tokyo Disney Resort. So this first one is one of many in the list that feels a lot faster than it actually is. This is because of not only the dark environments and the special effects, but also the ride vehicles, which are unique to this ride system. You can find this ride system in some of the American Disney parks as well, and if you've ridden those or this one, you're probably going to be very surprised with how slow this ride actually is. Deep in the Lost River Delta section of Tokyo DisneySea, you can find Indiana Jones Adventure Temple of the Crystal Skull. And funnily enough, you might think this is a tie-in to the worst Indiana Jones film ever made, but that was released in 2008, and this opened with DisneySea in 2001, so there is no correlation. I guess when they passed it by George Lucas, they mentioned Crystal Skulls. Hey, I mean, this is going out on a limb, but who knows? Maybe Imagineering came up with the idea of a crystal skull first, and then George ran with it with the new movie. So if you've ridden this ride before, you'll know that it's a very unique ride system, and it feels very different to anything that came before it. The ride uses an EMV, or Enhanced Motion Vehicle, which means that it doesn't just move forwards through the scenes, but it also tilts on two axes to make it feel bumpy and enhance the motion, hence the name. Clever name. Legendary Imagineer Tony Baxter said when they came up with the idea for the ride, he described it as riding Star Tours through Pirates of the Caribbean. You're essentially on a simulator, but instead of just looking at a screen in a little box, you're traveling through a ride. And you'll know if you've ridden any simulators, those things don't move at all, but sometimes they can feel incredibly fast and they're very convincing. So when you combine that with actual movement, it really does create a sensation of speed, and it's very surprising that this ride actually only travels at 23 kilometers per hour. Shocking, right? I mean, if you've ridden it, it really feels like it's whizzing through this place, especially on the corners as it'll kind of bank outwards and throw you out of your seat. It just feels like it's rushing through there. And they do say that the sensation of speed is more around 40 kilometers per hour, which would make sense. It puts it a bit higher up this list if you think of it that way. What I find funny about this ride system is it's so sophisticated and so incredible. You think about it, it's doing this for 12 hours a day, moving on all these different axes with a bunch of people inside, but they couldn't make it move backwards. They couldn't just get those wheels to roll backwards. Instead, in this final scene, they had to have the entire set, the walls and tunnel around you, move forward to give you the sensation of moving backwards when actually you're staying completely still. I know plenty of people have talked about this before, but it's just insane. I highly recommend, if you haven't before, try going on the ride and looking backwards at this point, because that will orient you. You can see that you're actually staying completely still. It is crazy the lengths they go to get these effects. Like, you wouldn't even think about moving backwards as being that important of a part. I'm sure a lot of people don't even realize they were supposed to be moving backwards because they're focused on the boulder coming towards them. But that's what they did. It does add a lot to this climax, and it's just a hell of a ride. I mean, if we were ranking the rides on how thrilling they are, this would be near the top of the list, but for the raw speed, yeah, just 23 kilometers per hour. It's really funny going from Indiana Jones, which, as I said, is one of the most thrilling rides in the park, to the next ride on our list, which is nearby. It's just a short walk away in the same park, Tokyo DisneySea. But this one is so much more kid-friendly. It's just funny having it in this order. But yeah, just on raw speed, if we head over to Mermaid Lagoon, you'll find an outdoor roller coaster there, Flounder's Flying Fish Coaster. This is a pretty standard kiddie coaster. It goes up a little climb hill, does a few bobs up and down, and then gradually makes its way down to the bottom. I will say, for what it is, it's very, very pretty, and I just love the ride vehicles. How adorable are these things? You know, in true DisneySea fashion, even these off-the-shelf kinds of typical rides, the theming just goes above and beyond and really elevates the experience. I'm not gonna pretend that it's a don't miss attraction, but if you happen to have young ones and they want to get on a little coaster, do check this out. It's really, really sweet. I love how the whole thing is sort of planted into the ground to make it less intimidating. As someone with a daughter who needs a lot of encouragement to go on these faster rides, I really appreciate that, like, the ride vehicles are super cute, it's all aerial themed, it's sunken into the ground so it makes it look a lot smaller than it is. And yeah, every choice that they've made with it just makes it so much less intimidating. I think these are things that, as adults, we often take for granted, but when you try and look at it through a kid's eyes, making a little roller coaster like this as unintimidating as possible, I'm sure this has been a lot of kids' first roller coaster, and I'm sure for a lot of kids, despite how beautiful and breathtaking DisneySea is, they come back and, hey, I rode my first roller coaster today. That's the memory that they take home with them, you know? So if you are a parent of a child who's feeling really brave and really good about having ridden it, you can tell them, this is faster than Indiana Jones. So let's go ride that next. Yep, Flounder's Flying Fish Coaster. God, it took so many takes to say that right. Flounder's Flying Fish Coaster travels at a maximum speed of 32 kilometers per hour, which, yeah, is 9 kilometers per hour faster than Indiana Jones, but 8 less than Indiana Jones feels. So it depends what kind of parent you are, which one you want to tell your kids about if you're going to try and get them on Indiana Jones afterwards. Now, you may be looking at this roller coaster and thinking, oh, okay, I know this type of Disney ride, right? It's a kiddie coaster in a Disney park, which looks like a roller coaster, but has some fun theming around it. You know, you could think about Goofy's Barnstormer in the Magic Kingdom, or the next one on our list, Gadget's Go Coaster, which you can find in California's Toontown, although they rethemed it a little bit recently. If you want the classic Gadget Go Coaster, you'll have to come to Tokyo Disneyland. This ride just beats out Flounder's Flying Fish Coaster at 35 kilometers per hour, just 3 kilometers an hour faster than Flounder's Flying Fish Coaster. Oh, I can't. Saying that every time is so difficult. Again, this ride is surrounded by super fun, cute theming. I always love this hand crank that's moving the vehicles up the climb hill. And yes, I'm with the people who thought that this was an Inspector Gadget ride for the longest time. But no, this is Gadget from Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers. The character Gadget from that show has apparently built this roller coaster for reasons. And yeah, this does feel a lot bigger than Flounder's Flying Fish Coaster for the reasons I just mentioned. You know, this isn't sunk into the ground. This is built on flat land. You're looking up at it instead of looking down at it. You can get a really nice view from Donald's boat, which sort of minimizes the whole thing. Again, if you're trying to coerce your children into riding it. I really can't get used to seeing the Beast's castle behind it. Like, that's a very new thing, and that's just how it's going to be forever. And hey, now in Toontown, you can see Elsa's ice castle behind it all as well. So you can get a pretty interesting view of the park from this ride as well, whilst also enjoying the 7th fastest ride in the resort. Okay, so now we've kind of got the kiddie stuff out of the way, we can get onto the more thrilling, bigger, longer roller coasters. In the same park, Tokyo Disneyland, we have this classic family Disney roller coaster. You can't imagine the resort without it. Some people think that after the Space Mountain redo, this ride could be getting a redo next, but I don't think it needs it. It just needs a little TLC and a little updating, but the ride is fantastic the way it is. And that's Big Thunder Mountain. I always thought this ride opened with the park in 1983 because it's just so intrinsic to the design of the park, but no, the ride opened on July 4th, fantastic date, in 1987, just 4 years after the park opened. So I think it was one of those phase 2 kind of plans where they knew they were going to build it, but they just didn't build it with the park so that they could slightly reduce the cost of building the park and also have something in their back pocket for an early expansion. Fun fact, Alice's Tea Party also didn't open with the park, which blew my mind when I found that out. But yeah, hold on to your hats and glasses, because this here's the wildest ride in the wilderness! That's right, we're on Big Thunder Mountain Railroad. Now, I haven't been successful in coercing my daughter onto this one yet, but the way I always sell it to her is that it's longer than it is big. It's like 3 little roller coasters in a row, right? The ride has 3 climb hills, goes through these really wonderful, uniquely themed environments. But to be honest, it is a fair bit faster than those other 2. This is the biggest leap we're taking in our list. in terms of the difference in speed of the rides, and that probably doesn't surprise you. You may have ridden Big Thunder Mountains in other countries around the world. Paris is my personal favorite. The way the whole thing's on an island, and I love a big, long, shallow decline. Like, at the end of that ride, it's not a steep drop, but it's just so long, and you're building up speed more and more and more. It's great. Tokyo is definitely one of the better ones. Very, very similar to the one in the Magic Kingdom in Florida, but they seem to recognize that after the third climb hill, the one in the Magic Kingdom kind of does what you would do when you play Roller Coaster Tycoon and you've run out of space. Like, it just has a climb hill just to kind of give it enough speed to get back into the station. Whereas Tokyo keeps a few extra little dips in there just to up the excitement at the end of the ride. Another thing it has in common with Florida is the fact that on the third climb hill, the boulders don't move anymore, nothing happens in there, which is really sad because I'm sure all of those effects work perfectly. But ever since one of those boulders fell on someone in Paris, they've just had to turn it all off. California had a wonderful solution to this, adding a bunch of special effects and smoke, and that scene looks so exciting, and ours is just so static. But yeah, this is a ride that I always love, whether it's in the daytime or especially at nighttime. There's just nothing quite like riding on an out-of-control runaway train going through the canyons, you know? A lot of rides, especially one that we'll get to later, at Disney, they enhance their speed by being in the dark, enclosed, and that makes it harder to tell how fast you're going, so it feels faster. Big Thunder Mountain doesn't do that, but I think the way that they make the ride feel faster than it actually is just having all these little vignettes and little animatronics and scenes and set pieces that you can't focus on because you're whizzing past them too fast. It's such a Disney big brain move to be able to throw the money at having animated figures that you're looking at for a fraction of a second. But it makes this ride what it is. It makes it feel so much faster when you're like, what's that? What's that? Shoom! And you're just rushing past it all. So how fast is it, Jordan? Well, this ride has a maximum speed of 45 kilometers per hour. So that's 10 kilometers per hour faster than Gadget's Go Coaster that we looked at earlier. Okay, we've spent a bit of time in Tokyo Disneyland now. Should we go next door to Tokyo DisneySea? No, we're staying here. Well, at least for now. So this is one that's going to date this video. Come to think of it, I probably shouldn't have made this video right now, but I did, and you're watching it, so let's just have fun and go along with it. You probably know the ride that I'm talking about. This ride is going to stop being at Tokyo Disneyland from July 31st this year, so just a couple more months. It's crazy how fast that's coming up. The classic Space Mountain. It's really funny, you know, that this ride has been open for 41 years. Like, the one in California was open for like just over 20 years, and people said it was falling apart and they needed to retrack the entire thing. I think it's a real testament to Oriental Land Company and their fantastic maintenance of these attractions that this ride has managed to delight and thrill guests for 41 years. I know it's indoors, so it's not subject to weather, but that is a very long time for a roller coaster to be running 12 hours a day, and they fly those trains through this thing. I mean, I've worked on roller coaster operations before. The speed that they send these trains through this ride is very impressive. By which I mean the frequency of the vehicles, not the actual speed, although this video is about the speed of the ride, so we are going to talk about that very, very soon. But first, especially with this ride closing so soon, I just want to talk about what makes Tokyo Space Mountain unique. It's exactly the same ride layout as the one in California and also the one in Hong Kong, but the building and the way that it's presented are quite unique. I love going up the moving walkway and just standing still and floating up to the second floor of this ride building. I think it adds so much to the experience. And then seeing Tomorrowland from this second floor vantage point, and also seeing a bit of DisneySea from up there as well, before you see this epic Coca-Cola sponsored CGI. And then we go into the building, and it's super cheesy and old-fashioned. But then you get to the station, and it's like eerie. There's this light pulsing through, like the heartbeat of some alien monster. You can see this enormous spaceship. There are these incredible, like, whirling, almost liquid light effects in there, and everything feels so surreal. And that's the moment when you're really transported to somewhere very, very different from the white concrete Tomorrowland that we just came from. It also sets the tone for the ride because we're not hearing anymore. We're hearing sounds. It's eerie. Everything feels so distant. I feel like this ride, better than any other Space Mountain and any other space-themed ride I've been on anywhere, really captures that daunting vastness of space. That it just goes on and on feeling. That what could be out there. The unsettling feeling of infinity. This ride sort of captures that. And I really hope the new one does too, because I think it's a great angle to come at this from. You know, I do hope we also get a bit of the awe, because this ride doesn't really have that. The awe of space, the awe of seeing the vastness of it all. But I want it to be undertoned with what this ride has in spades, which is that uncertainty. What is out there? Are we alone? How far does it go on for? One of the things that makes this ride especially unique from the other Space Mountains is that it has no onboard audio. So you're not getting some pulsing dun, 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 dun soundtrack through the ride. You're not getting Dick Dale shredding on the guitars. You're getting these sound effects. You're getting this distance. You can hear the other ride vehicles swooshing around, but because this is Japan, people aren't even screaming most of the time. It's just big and dark and heavy and empty. And as you're whizzing through this thing, you're having fun, but it's not, wee, we're going really fast kind of fun. It's just unsettling and weird, and I love it, and I'm gonna miss it so much. And I hope the new ride takes some cues from that. But Jordan, how fast is it? Shut up. Okay. It's very, very close between this and Big Thunder, actually, which is surprising, right? Because this ride feels so fast, but that's because of the darkness. It's because, you know, like I said about Big Thunder, having these things to focus on and then whizzing past them. Space Mountain does that in a very different way. This uses those pinpoint projections where you see these little stars projected pretty far away from your vehicle, and you can't focus on them. They're whizzing by. Well, actually, you're whizzing by them. And that really enhances the sensation of speed through this ride. But yeah, 48 kilometers an hour. Just 3 kilometers an hour faster than Big Thunder. So, I mean, basically the same, really. You know, like, you're not noticing 3 kilometers an hour difference. What you are noticing is, as I said, that it's so dark and that sensation of speed is really enhanced on this ride. Okay, I said that you can get a little sneak peek of DisneySea from the second floor of this queue, and yes, we're finally going over there now, okay? Okay? But before we do, I just want to thank everybody who joined my Patreon. I had a few new members recently. My Patreon subscribers get early access to these videos, no YouTube adverts, they get to watch the whole thing with no ads, and depending on the tier, you could get your name in the start of the video, or you could even get my personal chat, so you can talk to me about an upcoming trip you have and get a personalized guide, get all of your questions answered about this very confusing but wonderful and magical theme park destination. So please scan the QR code on screen now or check the link in the description if that would interest you. Thank you very much. Yes, we're at Tokyo DisneySea, but where are we going? Which ride? Well, we're going to one of the first rides you see when you enter the park. No, not that one. This one. Yeah, this big boy. Look how big she is. She's beautiful. Many of you will be aware of the phenomenal Disney classic thrill ride, Tower of Terror. Now, Galaxy Guardian Breakout Mission in California, I think it's called. Cosmic Mission to break out of the mission. That's the name of the ride there. But in DisneySea, it's still called Tower of Terror, baby, but it's not the Twilight Zone Tower of Terror. Our Tower of Terror is somewhat unique and calls for a different type of introduction. In some of the best Disney park storytelling in the world, we get the whole story of the rise and fall of the greedy, colonizing, nasty piece of work, Harrison Hightower III. There's a lot of brilliance to the way that they tell the story of this attraction. And to be honest, the queue is doing most of that heavy lifting. You know, your initial feeling when you see the building and you hear the screams and you see the name Tower of Terror, okay, it's a spooky, scary, droppy thing. Cool. And then you get into the queue and, you know, you're going through the gardens and you're seeing, okay, spooky, spooky things, spooky. But you're also seeing this name, Harrison Hightower, getting thrown around, and we see that he liked to collect things from around the world and bring them here that probably shouldn't have been taken from where they were taken from. A little further in, we start to see these banners. What happened that frightful night? Where did Harrison Hightower go? We see newspaper clippings. We start to get the idea, oh, he's not here anymore. Something happened, and we're taking a tour of this old hotel. I really love it when rides give the guests a reason to be there. Not every ride has to do it, and sometimes it can be kind of ham-fisted. But when it works right, like it does in this ride, I think it really adds a lot to the story. Nasty Man took Nasty Idol from Tribe. He shouldn't have taken it. Idol was alive. He goes up in the lift to his penthouse suite, and he drops down to the floor. The doors open, and to everyone's surprise, there was no remains of Harrison Hightower. Only the doll, Shariki Utundu, was left on the ground with a menacing grin, as if he knew something. The hotel gets closed down without its owner, and then 20 years later, the city of New York decide to open the place up for tours. And guess what? We get to tour his private penthouse suite. And guess what? We're gonna go up in a service elevator, which there are, for some reason, 3 of them in this building. And for some reason, they all go to his penthouse. And for some reason, they all have a fantastic view of the back. But none of that's important. Shenanigans ensue, as you might expect, and our journey up to Harrison Hightower's penthouse suite does not go as smoothly as we might hope, dropping down to the bottom before being yanked up by the menacing laughter of Shariki Utundu to be dropped down again. The storytelling adds so much to this ride, and it's a huge reason of why people say that DisneySea's is the best, even though the thrill sequence is, I think, better in the other parks around the world. Another thing that I prefer about those is that they have just a lap seatbelt, whereas this has an over-the-shoulder seatbelt like a car, but it's still a super thrilling ride and it's still a lot of fun. And you may not know this, but during the spring months from, it depends, but like January to March, they actually changed the ride to be a longer ride system that's more unpredictable and way more fun. I love that version of the ride. But what's weird is they don't like promote it much as an event. The ride looks totally normal until you get inside. So if you visited during those months, you might have experienced that version and have no idea that you did. The first time I rode it like that, I was so spooked because I'd already ridden the ride 1,000 times and I knew the ride system like the back of my hand. And then it dropped instead of going up, and I was like, oh no, something's gone wrong. This is terrible. So that was a wonderful moment. I wish I could relive that moment. But Jordan, how fast is it? Shut up. Okay. Well, it's quite a bit faster than Space Mountain. And to be honest, I thought this was one of the faster ones in the entire resort, but we have 3 more to go after this. 55 kilometers per hour, you're dropping down. But you have to remember, again, we have the darkness working with us. We have that wonderful view from the top, and then you get yanked down. And the thing that really makes this ride feel so fast and so thrilling is the fact that it's pulling you down. You know, a lot of drop tower rides, they'll just let gravity do all the work. They pull you up, let you go, and then you fall down. And some brakes will stop you from crashing into the ground. But the Tower of Terror ride system pulls you down, which gives you way more airtime. It makes it feel way more sudden, and it makes it feel way faster than 55 kilometers an hour. But that's how fast it is. Okay, my friends, we're on to the top 3 fastest rides in Tokyo Disney Resort. Number 3, we're back in Lost River Delta at DisneySea, next to Indiana Jones. You can actually see parts of this ride in Tower of Terror, which is super cool. I'm going to do a whole video about the secrets of Tower of Terror at some point, so make sure you're subscribed to see that, because that ride is so chock full of secrets. I wanted to put Tower of Terror secrets in a DisneySea secrets video, but there are hundreds just in that ride, so I'm going to have to do a deep dive on that ride at some point. But we're not talking about Tower of Terror right now. We're talking about Raging Spirits, which was added to the park just a year previous to Tower of Terror in 2005. And yeah, there are some really fun ways that the stories weave in between each other, which is super cool. If you have visited Disneyland Paris, you will know this ride layout as Indiana Jones et le Temple de Péril. Definitely pronounced that fantastically. If we have any French viewers, let me know in the comments that my accent was perfect. Thank you in advance for all those lovely comments. What surprised me when I first rode Raging Spirits is that the Indiana Jones roller coaster in Disneyland Paris is very, very rough and quite unpleasant. Despite its really short ride length, it leaves a lasting impression on everyone who rides it because it's so rattly and so jolty, and it hurts people. Raging Spirits, despite being the exact same roller coaster, couldn't be more different from that. It's silky smooth. It's so smooth. And I think it's so emblematic of the difference in ride maintenance that OLC and Disneyland Paris have had over the years. That Tokyo Disney has the same roller coaster, but it feels so much smoother. I mean, the one in Paris is a lot older as well, so it also has that going against it. And they turned it backwards for a while, which is weird. I wish they'd turn Raging Spirits backwards. That would rock. Now, despite being a small, compact layout, which honestly doesn't have that much to offer in terms of a roller coaster, again, that DisneySea theming magic comes into play because you're seeing fire, you're going through these hot, steamy mist effects, and everything is moving around you. It adds a lot to the ride. And really, this ride is just my first looper, as far as I'm concerned. Everything is building up to that loop. The ride is a pretty steady pace. It lets you catch your breath after each dip until whizzing you through that loop and then taking you back into the station. And I like that. I like it as a my first loop coaster. I think that's cool. I remember riding Revolution at Six Flags Magic Mountain, and I love how the whole ride just built up to this loop. And it has this like long, shallow decline. Yeah, I love those, I told you. and you can see the loop coming for so long, and you're just going into it. It makes it feel so epic and so special. And I like that about Raging Spirits. Another cool thing about Raging Spirits is you get this higher up view of DisneySea, and now also Fantasy Springs looking the other way, which you don't get to see from anywhere else in the park, really. It's a great queue, and a little secret tip, secret 8-bit theme park Japan tip, that I don't know why they keep it such a secret, but they do. This ride has single rider, so does Indiana Jones. Those are the only two rides in the entire resort now that have single rider lines, and they don't advertise it. You have to like ask a cast member, and then they'll put you through the fast pass queue with like a special pass that tells them that you're not a fast pass person. So like many things at Tokyo Disney Resort, it is needlessly complicated, but it can save you a ton of time if you're willing to be sat alone. Or maybe you're visiting the park on your own anyway, in which case no loss, right? Definitely worth checking out Single Rider for this and Indiana Jones if you're tired of looking at these enormous queues all day and you want to just quickly get on something. But Jordan, how fast is it? Well, this ride clocks in at 60 kilometers per hour, 60. And that has to be going into the loop, because that definitely feels like the fastest part of the ride. Do Disney pull any tricks on this ride to make it feel faster? Well, a little bit, yeah, not so much as the other ones. But again, there's all these things to look at, there's all these things taking your focus. There's like scaffolding everywhere, so there's always some kind of beams or something rushing right past you. And then traveling through the mist at the end, like that's the slowest part of the ride. It's not a fast feeling, but it's very, very cool, and it's a lovely way to finish the ride. And this set piece is just incredible. Like, this never gets old. Water on fire? That's against the laws of nature. How are you even doing that? Speaking of water, we're going to go back to Tokyo Disneyland to check out a very uncontroversial ride about little dancing animals and things. It's Splash Mountain, okay? How many jokes can I make about Splash Mountain being uncontroversial? Yeah, if you didn't know, Splash Mountain is still Splash Mountain in Tokyo Disneyland. And whilst I don't think it's going to stay that way forever, I think it's going to stay that way for a little while longer. So if you're booking a trip now, you'll get to see the Braz in there, for better or worse. This ride layout is exactly the same as the one in the Magic Kingdom in Florida. Oh, and by the way, if you're interested in like how these rides compare to the other ones around the world, so that if you're coming here in the future and you want to know, like, well, is Buzz Lightyear different to the one I've been on already, or should I check it out? I'm going to do a whole video about that because I've been to all the Disney parks around the world and I live in Tokyo, so I know exactly what's different between each of the rides. But I don't see anyone out here talking about those differences and how different the rides are and whether you should prioritize something or not. So make sure you subscribe to the channel if that video sounds like something you would enjoy. It's honestly so weird going from, oh yeah, we have a Splash Mountain, we have one of the 3 Splash Mountains in the world, to now suddenly that being a Tokyo exclusive. It's really strange. You know, normally we build something that's exclusive to Tokyo and unique and hasn't been built anywhere else. But that's something that was in other parks, but now isn't. I have to constantly remind myself like that that's a Tokyo exclusive now. That's only in Tokyo. So the ride layout is exactly the same as the one in Florida, but Tony Baxter, the man who designed the ride himself, said that Tokyo always had the best version of the ride, so he's glad that this is the one that's sticking around. And the reason for that is that it's built into the entire land around it. The whole of Critter Country was built for Splash Mountain. And it basically makes the whole land Splash Mountain land. It's not a big land, but it's full of these cute little details of critters who are living there and exploring it. And it all extends the story of Splash Mountain. Not to mention that this ride has just the best pacing and storytelling of the three that did exist, I think. And then those mist effects before the climb hill. OLC do not skimp on mist. They love that stuff, and I love it too, so that's great. Another thing OLC are so good at is looking after their animatronics, and I've heard so many horror stories about people riding Splash Mountain in the months before it closed in the American parks of like entire scenes just not working. The animatronic figures not working, the lights not being on and things. Rest assured, if you come to Tokyo Disneyland to ride Splash Mountain, it looks pristine. It looks like it just opened yesterday. But Jordan, I don't care about how good the animatronics look. How fast does it go? Well, it just beats out Raging Spirits by 2 kilometers an hour. Yeah, this one clocks in at 62 kilometers an hour. So when you're right at the bottom of that drop, that's how fast you're going. That means you're fast enough to do a loop there. Hey, when they changed it to Tiana's Bayou Adventure, they should have added a loop at the bottom. That would have been great. Okay, we're on to the last one, the final one. The King, the fastest ride in the whole resort. And maybe the best, definitely one of the best. First, I want to tell you a little story, though. Close your eyes and imagine, or don't imagine, because I have some lovely B-roll that I take a lot of time in making. But just imagine you're walking through the gates of DisneySea for the first time. You see the aquasphere, this enormous globe that's rotating, that shows off how much of the world is ocean, setting the park's thesis in motion. You see the Miracosta, this gorgeous hotel that looks like an entire Italian village. You walk through underneath, and you get the most beautiful Disney Parks reveal of all time. You see a volcano in the distance with a palace built in front of it, across from a lagoon. As you're trying to catch your breath again, taking in the awe of this scene, you notice something flying out of the side of the volcano. What's that? Well, my friends, that is Journey to the Center of the Earth, the fastest ride at Tokyo Disney Resort. But the ride's speed is really just a tiny part of what makes this such an incredible ride. This ride really feels like the culmination of everything Disney had learned over the years when they opened it. And it's so reassuring to know that this is the park's icon. So for as long as DisneySea exists, Journey to the Center of the Earth will exist as well. Even before you get into the queue, you're discovering these caves and tunneling through and seeing this enormous drill that's clearly drilled into the earth. And then you get into the queue and you see Nemo's labs that he's built in there, testing things. He's been finding these eggs. What could they be? You see posters talking about crystal caverns. What could that be? And then you get into the Terravator, and as if you haven't already been transported to another world when you entered DisneySea, and then when you entered these caves, and then when you entered the queue, when you come out of the Terravator, you are in the Earth. You just feel like you've gone somewhere that humans should not go. But thanks to Captain Nemo's incredible technology, it's possible. And here we are. And before you can even take in how incredible this station is with these enormous moving props, you're boarding your ride vehicle. These scuffed, shoveled, tunneling devices that can sit 6 people and 3 umbrellas, impressively enough, is ready to take you through these scenes that were foreshadowed in the queue line when you entered the queue. We go through the crystal caverns where the crystals seem to sing as they glimmer. And then we find a bioluminescent forest with these underground critters that are jumping around and eating bioluminescent moss as these giant mushrooms dance around. It's pure Disney magic. But then, in that classic thrill ride trope, something goes wrong. Wahoo! We see some eggs, we see steam blasting out. Psh, psh. What's going on? And then we see the eternal lake, this infinite lake, until a lightning storm blasts near our vehicle. Pow! pow, and then you're like, oh no, that made me jump. And then you see some lava, and then there's fire, like a massive real fireball. And then you see the biggest animatronic that actually works that Disney have ever made. The lava monster. And not only is this thing huge, it's so detailed, it has all of these tiny little nuanced movements, and you can't take any of that in the half a second that you see it. Your vehicle knows you have to get out of there, and you launch around the corner, and you're getting faster and faster and faster until you dive up out of the side of the volcano, and finally, that moment that you had when you entered the park and saw a little ride vehicle in the distance popping out the side of the volcano has been paid off. You've done it. You've conquered this beast. But just before you disembark, the ride gives you a little peek of Mysterious Island to remind you, hey, you're in this part of the park. You're in Nemo's part of the park. You've still got tons of exploring to do. Ugh, what a ride! But Jordan, okay, so how fast does it go? What do you think? How much faster than Splash Mountain do you think it is? Splash was 62 kilometers per hour. Well, Journey to the Center of is... I don't know what that was. 75 kilometers per hour. Again, not crazy speedy, right? But everything I just described should tell you, one, why this ride is just jaw-droppingly good. But also, that speed is enhanced by you're going through the dark, you're seeing these mists, you've got these little focal points, and you've just seen this enormous lava monster. Like, you could be going 10 kilometers an hour and you would still be like screaming and go, woo! Oh, this ride is so great. However, whilst Tokyo Disney Resort does so many things so well, there are also a bunch of things that, to be honest, other Disney parks do way better than here, and Tokyo Disney should really improve. So you should check out this video if you're planning a trip and you want to know what to look out for, or if you're just curious about, well, what are the downsides of Tokyo Disney? Because we always hear all the good things.